the responsibility for Christians and even Christian leaders is exactly the same responsibility as worldly people have who watch programs on television like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon or A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's so complicated that just watching the episode on television, you can't understand it because there's so many family interconnections and who's related to who and who's cousin and who's uncle and who's second cousin and who's aunt. And it all gets so complicated that the person who decides to be a fan of the series and watch it on television has to really get to grips with what the author, the person who wrote the series, is thinking and what their mind is. You can't just get that by watching it. You have to really go into understanding what the author meant by what that they made in the program so that it makes logical sense. And Christians are no different. Christian leaders and Christians, if they listen to my interpretation on the Bible on these videos, they have the same responsibility as a fan of Game of Thrones. They can't just watch it and say, oh, I can't understand Nicholas, it's too complicated. He's made 76 videos about the Bible. But the responsibility for understanding my mind to someone watching my videos is just the same requirement as someone who would watch Game of Thrones, because you can't just watch Game of Thrones and understand it. You have to try and work out what the author's logic is and what the story is so that it makes sense, because it does make sense, but it doesn't make sense to someone who isn't prepared to work it all out and analyze it. So I'm saying people have to watch my videos, Christian leaders and Christians, they've still got the same responsibility when it comes to my religious videos about the Bible as someone who's a fan of Game of Thrones. They have to spend time working out what I'm trying to get at, what my thinking is, what my mind is, and what my logic is. And that's just the same responsibility as what worldly people have when they become fan of a great series like Game of Thrones. And I don't think it's great because of all the sin in it. I think it's great because it points out about genealogies and family lines and explains how sins are passed on from one generation to another. And Christians need to understand this. And that's why it's a great series, because it's a teaching tool to get you to understand the Bible better by understanding the genealogies of Game of Thrones.